had a three-point approach to this. When I was contacted by Mr. Swartz and Mr. Woods, and I can't remember the other person's name, I too was enthusiastic about the idea that, oh boy, I get to share some really great things that have happened in this community in discussing this property, starting with the general plan and the stories that we received when we were doing the general plan, and we were notified with red poster boards that anything other than light industrial was a killer land use decision. They had a whole bunch of killer land use decisions, but that one stood out in my mind. So that was number one, is that we were going to be informed in any conversation with protecting the interests of the industrial park, and we did so. So when we did meet, I said be sure to take a look at the short script by Dan Isofano, who is an internationally well-known land use planner who also does a lot of facilitation. And you probably remember that February in the one of the school auditoriums or cafeteria, I guess it was. I think it was a bit chilly, so that's why I remember February. And out of, I believe, 89 to 92 people stood up and said what they wanted. And that was having a whole pond full of fish right there. You had the entire community saying what they wanted, not no development, but what they wanted. And to a person, they described an industrial park, a business park. They described the ability to increase our business activity and add diversity so that we would have independence and less dependence on one single industry, no matter what the industry is. It's not animus toward any industry. It is simply smart business. So I said, you know, be sure to take a look at that. Then we had the Green Gateway alternative land use plan that was submitted that had specific plan elements to it and everything. Then prior to that, there had been another session that we had that is videotaped of, I think it's something along 8 hours or so of public input about what they wanted in this community. The community has not deviated from what it has wanted. It has been very, very consistent. And that developer walked away from that agreement. And I was always amazed about that he would do that. And I don't really understand the motive behind somebody. And that ties into the other concern I have, and that is what a number of you have talked about, and that is the cost of the land. Now, keeping in mind that the developer has owned this land for at least 35 years. And you know darn well he didn't pay what the current asking price is, unless there's a refinance for whatever reason. I don't know the particulars. But if price of land, that most of which is not actually developable, is driving planning decisions, that is not smart growth. That is not what you want to have in the community. What you want to have is the development that serves the needs of the community. And how that development works is this way. One, you don't put people in jeopardy. And putting residential uses out there puts people at jeopardy. You don't put young people at greater jeopardy with their tender lungs. So why would you want to take this developer through a torturous process, having some tiny little glimmer of a notion that it's an okay idea to do that? I think that's a disservice to a very, appears to me a very fine business person. So I was, as I said, I was enthusiastic when they came and talked to me. I thought, at last we're going to get to it. When I talked to staff, I said, you know, we're building a really good information basis here with the work that Audrey Taylor and her team have been doing. As a matter of fact, at a recent breakfast we had with, I think it was breakfast for lunch, I never can keep those straight, at the Solano Economic Development Board. Room is the usual crowded place. There are over, I don't know, 120 people or so. And she was the best show there. And she pointed out the investments that we need to make, not only in Benicia, but in the county. One is recognize our strengths and our assets, and that is the industrial base. In this economic study that was presented to us, there is not a word about manufacturing in that economic study, not a word. And we are one of the last significant manufacturing areas in the Bay Area. Now, why would we want to jeopardize that? That makes us unique. We're not competing with Concord and warehousing. We are competing in the Bay Area for one of the few places that you can still manufacture something. So then I went, I'm fortunate that I have access to some people who are very helpful. And one of them was the founder of the Local Government Commission, and I said, so what are some economic things that I should know about? Building on the information that we've been getting from the consultant. And she says, well, you need to take a look at the economist Minicozy. And what he is showing that can be done, he does this across the country. He recently was at Davis and he made a presentation about how they could take what they have and add value to it without having to break new ground for new development. And I want to get back to that point in just a second. But to go on to what Minicozy says is that the city needs to have increased value of development. And new development does not do that. It does your one-time fees, and then if it's residential, you tend to go down, as Councilmember Campbell was pointing out. And if it's commercial, depending on the kind of commercial that it is, it's even less of a return to the city. The best investment that the city can have is by redeveloping the aging industrial park that we have and putting partnerships together, finding resources to be able to add value to some of the buildings we have, making those into more amenable places for some of the clean tech industries or for office work or things that people need. So the idea that we have to continue building in order to survive economically is true within our boundaries and within our infrastructure, because then our costs are low and the returns to the city are higher, and we can invest in parks and roads and the city services and make sure that the industrial park gets fiber optics, all of those things we need to do. And we're not going to solve the problem, never have in this town, solve the problem by being desperate and approving something out in new growth area that's not suitable. This land is not suitable for these massive concepts. It is very suitable for an expansion of our industrial area to a certain degree. But the land is very challenged, and that is part of what drives it up in cost. So, and then the last thing is, again, that the study that was provided in the report, I sort of feel like I was reading something that was done years ago when I had the opportunity to work in Clayton, and they had a lot of issues that were coming before them. Incidentally, Seeno was the developer who didn't get what he wanted, and he sold at a very high price. He sold the Keller Ranch and to Presley, which had a lot of money because they were owned by a utility, and Oakhurst is a pretty decent development. And while I was there, one of the things that came out that I really learned from others is you got to be careful what you do and how it affects your downtown. And so if you put commercial out where it draws away from downtown, that's very risky. And I've said this before here, that you have lots of examples. Pleasanton's the prime one. And they just about destroyed their downtown, and it spent literally millions of dollars to bring it back to play. And now we have a very thriving downtown, thanks to a lot of the work that Councilmember Strawbridge has done, and other people get a whole lot of credit. Councilmember Campbell does little things that tinkers around with the downtown, and ultimately it all adds up to a major investment of value in our downtown. Why would we want to hurt our downtown? That does not make sense. So, commercial development that serves the interest needs, the service needs of the industrial park makes a lot of sense. That's smart. Putting children in harm's way is not smart. Having overpriced land and trying to get the most out of it is not good business. And I hope that you are successful, because there'd be nothing more I'd like to see is a plan that comes back and reflects the general plan with some modifications on the commercial. You're dead right. It's too much of a glob up there, so we'd have to modify that. But I think you have the skill sets and the knowledge. I've seen your work. I know you know how to do this. You're not doing it. And because of that, I don't want to encourage you. I don't think it would be fair.